So that's the only one, well, since Brian McFadden, I think Mike wrote. And I think it's something to talk about regarding continuity, because that's a thing. And, this was a guy that, Shane Beamer and Dow Loggains took his time to hire. It wasn't a rush job. When you thought you had Mike Bobo, then you didn't. And you had to go out and get a guy quick, and you got Marcus Satterfield. And look, Satterfield got a lot of criticism, which he deserved. We sat here, my first year was, Satterfield's last season here as the OC, and again, Marcus Satterfield, 10 times smarter than I'll ever be. He knows he's forgotten more football than I'll ever know. I'm sure on a whiteboard, Marcus Satterfield would wow you. I'm sure when you sit down and talk offense with Marcus Satterfield, he wowed you. But Marcus Satterfield, I think he was, sometimes, and you run into this, we've all run into these people in life, they're too smart. They're just too smart. Everyone told me about Satterfield. The guy is so smart. Massively intelligent guy. High-level intellect. And that's great, but you've also got to be able to understand not everyone has that intellect that you have. Not everyone is, not everybody's knocking on the door of the Mensa meeting to go in. It's you've got to be able to relate to everyone of different levels of football IQ, intellect, processing information. You've got to be able to take your vision and your big brain and be able to share it with others to where they get what you're talking about and they get what you want to do. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If you're in a position where you got to take your smarts, your brain data, and then you've got to present it to people so they can follow your brain data, and they just can't. They can't. Remember, we joked about the big Denny's menu of plays with Marcus Satterfield. And finally, the offense near the end of Satterfield's final season, that offense started to click, and really clicked after the Florida game, which was, remember, that was abysmal, where Shane Beamer basically met with Marcus Satterfield and said, okay, bro, break out the menu. Okay, we're going to stop making steak. We don't need to make steak. And we got all these desserts. Just, why don't we just have ice cream? Basically, Marcus, bring this offense down a notch. Make it more relatable. I'm not going to say simplify, because that makes it sound like people aren't smart to understand it. Now, what you're doing is you're making it relatable. You're making it more streamlined, less thinking, more doing. And the offense popped at the end. But I think there needed to be a change. And Marcus Satterfield, thank God for Matt Rule. Matt Rule helped out everyone's cause by taking Marcus Satterfield to Nebraska. And then comes Dow Loggains. And the first time, Shane has got to take his time and find the offensive coordinator that he thought was the best fit for what his vision was of what he wanted in an offense. And Dow Loggains is now here for year 2. And I think that's a thing. I really do. I think continuity is never bad. And what Dow Loggains did last year, look, it's hard to grade the offense from last year because, the offensive line was a mess. You had all those injuries, guys who had no business being on the field had to play out of necessity. And it's very tough to say what kind of a job Dow Loggains did. I think I give him a thumbs up because through that whole mess, South Carolina's offense till the end of the year still found ways to be somewhat productive. They weren't in the upper, levels of the SEC in stats or even watching games. They weren't consistently explosive or productive. But again, you were dealing with an offensive line that was struggling. And Dow Loggains did find a way to get something accomplished on offense through the season. So we'll see this year with what we hope is a healthy, solid offensive line. We'll see what Dow does with an offensive skill set that's got a lot of question marks, but also a lot of possibilities, right? Lenore Sellers, his ceiling is ridiculously high, right? He could be a phenomenal quarterback, dual threat quarterback. Those kind of quarterbacks that just change an offense. He's got that much potential. Will he reach that potential? I don't know. That's part of the job of the offensive staff led by Dow Loggains, to be able to have Lenore Sellers reach his potential. We'll see. But the potential is there. Also, the rawness is there. And the development needs to happen. And you're hearing nothing but phenomenal things about Lenore Sellers. And we hope that translates to a quarterback that can beat you with his legs, with his arm, a guy who from the neck up gets how to process the game, a leader, a grinder. I mean, those are all the things that make you a great quarterback. And if South Carolina truly can get that from Lenore Sellers, we've seen other programs where the quarterback elevates the offense, which can also elevate the entire team. That's when Dow Loggains and his staff to unleash all of the abilities and potential of Lenore Sellers, right? Yeah. And you got question marks at running back. If Rocket Sanders is healthy and the offensive line is solid, South Carolina should run the ball really well. Plus, you throw in, again, the running ability of Sellers. And plus, you have depth at running back. That's the hope there. Big key, will Rocket Sanders be healthy? Everything we've heard is he should be good to go when it's time to go. The wide receiver room is, you need two rooms. You got so many wide receivers. So many guys through the portal. And you're hoping a couple of them can really step up and pop for you. You've also got a couple of returning guys like Harbor and Stevenson. You got some interesting freshmen like Mazio Bennett. How is this thing going to piece itself together? Can Larvadane and Brown, the two transfers from Miami of Ohio and Coastal Carolina, can they be as good as advertised? Can Nick Harbor come in and get ramped up in summer camp to where he can be a productive piece for you in his sophomore year? There's a lot of question marks on offense, and it's up to Dow and his guys to figure it all out. But if the offensive line is solid, then we can start truly judging the Dow Loggains offense. It's going to be different than last year's offense. Forget the offensive line for a minute. Spencer Rattler wasn't going to be out there, running freeze options. Not a lot of RPOs for Spencer where he's going to take off and run the ball. This is a different quarterback, a different skill set for Lenore Sellers. So it's going to be, again, we will see where it goes. But there's a ton of potential for this offense. We just got to see if it can reach its potential. And again, that goes to the offensive coordinator who's back for year two. And let's just hope that the Dow Loggains will be much better than Marcus Satterfield. Now, I think Dow Loggains is. I thought last year, I love what Dow Loggains said when it came to, we're going to build the offense around the skill set of the players. We want to run an offense that's going to be easy for them to process so they can just play and not think. We want to make it streamlined. We want to make it quick. We have to understand that, these guys aren't NFL players that all they do is football, football, football. They've got class. We've got X amount of time that we can work with them during the week. We've got to make things as streamlined and easy to pick up as possible. I loved all that. And I don't know how much of Dow Loggains' vision he got to really implement last year because, well, again, the offensive line was a mess. So I like Mike Yuva's post about continuity. I do. And you hope the offense grows from year one to year two. Now, Marcus Satterfield, again, yes, Satterfield was here for 2 years. There was continuity, but it just never, you watched year one. Year one didn't make a lot of sense. You'd run the ball real successful against one team, and then you'd go away from the run against the next team. You weren't playing to your skills, it seemed like. You were playing to the wants of the offensive coordinator. It's my system. It's what we're going to do. Instead of saying, dude, what do you do well? Do that. You got a quarterback who you thought was going to be a grad assistant, running around getting everybody coffee. And now he's playing. Come on. Let's look at the strength of the offense. Let's play to the strength. And that's what I feel like Dow Loggains says he wants to do. We saw it last year. They threw the ball a lot last year because that was the strength of the offense. Spencer Rattler, Xavier Legette, and some of the other receivers and tight ends when they were healthy. the strength of the offense wasn't going to be running the ball because, again, the offensive line was having trouble consistently winning up front to open holes in the run game. And you had your running back room consisted of a former quarterback, former wide receiver, now a running back, and a running back from Division II. And another running back who really his strength was playing in space. And then you had a freshman. So we'll see what happens in year 2 of Dow Loggains in the offense. But we haven't really focused enough on the part of, well, the good news is, yeah, there's a lot of changes, but the offensive coordinator's back. So I thought it was an interesting post by Mike Uva on Gamecock Central. I will come back in here. Casey Henry was on the Garnet Trust Hour yesterday, I believe with Chris. And Casey Henry says they had some interesting comments about a multitude of things, like how they've changed the way they're lifting weights and what they're doing in the weight room. And we're going to hear about that from Casey Henry, because remember, there's a lot of conversation. Was Luke Day going to be back this year? Even though there's a lot of people who think Luke Day is very smart and good at what he does, there was some conversation about Luke Day and would he be back? Because there were some question marks of some things that needed to be answered or needed to be tweaked or changed. So we'll hear from Casey Henry about that coming up on the halftime show. Terry Ford, David Ayers here, punching the buttons and keeping us going. We are rolling till 3 here on the game. (803-875-MENS), the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. 803-875-MENS. It might be the best thing you've ever done because you're just not feeling like you. You're getting older. That's what happens to guys. All of a sudden, a lot of things that, worked easy and worked natural don't do that anymore. Your sleep, your life drive, sex drive, personal drive, professional drive, your memory, your workouts, your recovery from workouts. All these things that used to be snap might not be like that, and it might just be low testosterone. One way to find out, you call 803-875-MENS. You set up a free confidential consultation with Dr. Dan and the staff. If they think you could be suffering from low testosterone, they'll do some lab work. If it is low T, they'll put you on a program for you to get back to being you again. It could just be low T. Call the Men's Clinic, find out. Halftime show with Terry Ford here on the game till 3. David Ayers here pumping up the buttons for us as we roll on until we get to the post-game show. Don't forget SEC Media Days. We will be in Dallas Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. Never been to Dallas. You ever been to Dallas, Dave?
Yes.
Wow, Dave, that was pretty good. You know, we talk for a living, Dave. Dave, you been to Dallas? Yep. But that was my fault. I'll tell you why. I broke a rule. You never ask a yes-no question.
Right.
And I asked you a yes-no question. That was on me. So I apologize, Dave. That was on me.
Yeah,
Dave.
It was a radio convention.
Oh. Yeah. REB?
No, it was Dan O'Day.
Oh, the Dan O'Day, the boot camp.
Yeah, boot camp, yeah.
Yeah, morning show boot camp.
Yeah, hung out with Randy Michaels and the guys from WNEW.
Nice.
Yeah.
Question, did you like Dallas?
I did like Dallas, yeah. But I was shocked about one thing.
What?
Not that this has anything to do with sports. So we went to Dealey Plaza. First of all, the guy I'm with driving, he just zipped through there 100 miles an hour. I'm like, dude, slow down. But I tell you that is it's like a half a block long. There's nothing to it. I could have hit someone with a rubber band. It's not like, oh, it's great. Oh, it's almost impossible. No, it was not. Nothing to it.
That's what you took away from the whole trip?
Yeah, that was it.
Dealey Plaza. Is that your phone?
Yeah, Sam's Club has a cell.
So you get alerts from Sam's Club?
Yeah, I do.
Nice.
Don't miss out.
I was going to ask you about any of the places to go to in Dallas. Obviously, you can tell me about the illegal ones off the air, but any illegal ones, but you told me don't go to Dealey Plaza.
Well, go and then go, what in the heck here? This place is tiny. Really, seriously, very small.
So what was the offer from Sam's Club?
Now is my chance to take part in over $11,000 in savings.
Nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Go get them. Well, Dave, thank you for those deep thoughts on Dallas. We appreciate that.
Anytime. Yeah. It was 1994, so I couldn't tell you where.
Different world now, probably. Who knows? All right, so we're going to go to Dallas SEC Media Day. Shane will speak on Monday. Third coach to go, probably early afternoon is my guess with Shane. We'll be there, like we said, covering the whole thing all 4 days. We will have this show noon to 3 and then 3 to 6 with the post-game show with Jay and Elijah. Have reports, though, on the early game and the 8 o'clock hour, also with Tyler on the extra point and with the Gamecock Central guys as well. So we'll keep you up to date on what's going on at SEC Media Days. Obviously, the buzz is Oklahoma, Texas now in the league. So that will be the big topic of conversation for the whole league. We'll obviously be focusing on a lot of things that are just Gamecock-centric. So that will start on Monday here on the game in Florence, Myrtle Beach, and here in Columbia. All right, so Case and Henry was on the Gamecock on the Garnet Trust Hour with Chris Clark yesterday. And obviously Case and Henry hurt right off the get last year in the North Carolina game. And Case and Henry has had, unfortunately, the injury gods have followed him all over the campus here in Columbia since he's been a Gamecock. Here is Case and Henry, though, Cut 10, Dave, talking about his recovery.
I'm doing great now. I'd say I'm fully back. I had a really good spring for me personally. I took it slow getting back, which I needed to do last year. Because I was trying to play through injury in the season and it just wasn't working. I was in a ton of pain all the time and I wasn't really enjoying it. So I had to just step back and I was like, I need to do what's best for me and kind of get ready for next season because I know I'm going to play next season and I know they need me to play and I can't let my guys down. So, I mean, injuries happen and stuff, but I got to bounce back. I can make it back from anything. And I'm feeling great now. I've done a lot of work with Coach Chip in the weight room. I've done a lot of work with our strength staff, our conditioning staff, like our training staff. Everybody has come together to really help me get back and teach me what to do, how to do it, and so I can prepare myself adequately for the season. And I really appreciate all of them for that.
I mean, you want Case and Henry healthy. Now, is a healthy Case and Henry the absolute starter? I mean, it feels like that's what everybody says. If Case and Henry is healthy, with his ability and skills, he should lock down or at least start the year as one of the number ones at tackle. We'll see if that's the way it goes when it gets snapped for real against Old Dominion. But Henry's injury obviously had a snowball effect all over the place because tackle was a place where South Carolina really didn't have a ton of depth. You had guys who shouldn't have been on the field, whether it's someone transferring in from a lower level or a couple of freshmen. You didn't want those guys on the field last year playing at all, and unfortunately you had to use them. So Case and Henry healthy obviously is a thumbs up, but you have depth now. You have Josiah Thompson. You have other tackles as well. We saw, and worse comes worse, Rashawn Lee rolled out there at right tackle and held his own before he got hurt last year. So it feels like there's more depth at tackle to where if you do have an injury, you can survive it better than last year where you were in a ton of trouble. All right, and the other thing about the getting stronger, and I want to throw this out, and Case and Henry also was talking about the changes in the strength and conditioning program led by Luke Day. This past year, or now I should say, the workouts this offseason, more Olympic-style lifting, like overhead presses, squats, deep squats, cleans. Have you ever seen a clean and press? You know what I'm talking about, just a clean. It's an Olympic-style lift. They've been doing a lot more of that this year. Case and Henry, as he put it, according to the Gamecock Central article I'm looking at, there's more stuff in the weight room, and during conditioning, it pertains to on-field action. Because one of those things, like you'll hear, lifting programs or workout programs that go to functional strength, like strength to do everyday things. Like you've probably seen guys who like are weight room like beasts, right? But ask them to pick up a box and they struggle because it's just first of all, they're using muscles they don't use in the weight room, and two, they're just not used to that kind of functional, I guess for lack of a term, activity. So there are lifting programs and strengthening programs that are about functional strength and functional movements. Like doing more in the weight room and in the workout room that can help you actually take it to the field. So I obviously think that's a good idea. Functional type training and lifting that will be specifically to how you move on the football field. Well, I think that's very interesting. Case and Henry, we're going to get to another cut here in the next segment. His assessment of the offensive line going into summer camp. We're going to get to that in the next deal. Again, Case and Henry on the Garner Trust Hour with Chris Clark yesterday. And so we'll hear what Case and Henry has to say about the offensive line. That's coming up next. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Dave Adair. Maybe Dave, Dave will give us maybe another great story about his travels around the country. Because the one about Dallas is pretty gripping. Halftime show till 3 on the game. What we're talking about is Carolina football. We've discussed continuity in the offensive coordinator room with Dow Loggains. I mean, there was some continuity with Marcus Satterfield, but look, I'm not trying to be mean, but that just didn't work. 2 years of offense just had no rhyme or reason to it till the very end after Shane had that, come to Jesus with him. It just the offense, there was no rhyme or reason. There was no rhyme or reason to it. It felt like the plan was there was no plan. It just felt like Marcus Satterfield had plays he had to run. And he was going to do things the way he wanted to do it. Forget the skill set of the players. Forget the defense they were going up against. It was like, this is what I'm going to do. Why? Because I'm really smart. Okay. And it was too much thinking. It was a bad run. It just was. And so we have Dow Loggains for year 2 here in Columbia. And again, and we talked about at the beginning of the show, it's very tough to gauge or grade what Dow Loggains did last year because, the offensive line was just, it was a mess. So we've talked about that. We played a little Casey Henry for you, the Gamecock offensive lineman. We heard him talk about his recovery from last year's injuries. And Casey Henry says he's good to go, 100% ready to roll. And there's a lot of early depth charts, as we always enjoy a good depth chart, that has Casey Henry as a starter at tackle. All right, Casey Henry also talked about this on the Garnet Trust Hour yesterday with Chris. His thoughts on the offensive line, his assessment, cut 11, Dave, of the O-line room for South Carolina.
Okay, so I think Coach Teasley did a wonderful job in recruiting this year. The additions of dudes like Torselli and Kamar Bell, like that, like new guys that transferred in, they're fantastic additions. I love all those guys. They're great players. They're going to add fantastic, really good depth, and they are older guys, so they add leadership to the room as well. I think we've got a ton more depth than we did last year. And I think the group skill level the average skill level of the group has risen a lot. So there's a lot of really good players that are going to be fighting to play all the time. There's not going to be a lot of skill drop-off between the first group and the second group. We can both run all the plays. We're both very explosive. As you saw in the spring game, like the both offensive lines are playing pretty well, and we'll get better as the summer goes on. We're working with LT every day. We do about an hour and a half at Indy every single day after the lift. We get in the classroom. We got Quizlets we got to do. We take quizzes. We all know the playbook. We know everything. Like, it's great. And that hasn't happened since I've been here. It was always the older guys know the stuff, and the older guys are going to play, and the younger guys just kind of watch. But we're integrating the younger guys in everything. A younger guy that's really impressed me is Josiah. Josiah played really well in the spring. I think he's really mature. He's very quiet, and he handles his business with everything. So I think he's going to be a great player for us, and I'm really excited to watch him play too. I think it'll be a big addition to us. But in addition and also Cam Pringle, who I've personally kind of taken on coaching at right tackle. So I'm trying to help him out and stuff when he's coming back from surgery or whatever, like right now. So he's getting back well, and he looks great on the field and everything. I'm trying to teach him what I know so I can help him become a better player when I leave or move on or whatever. So trying to help the younger guys come forward to help us out more in the season. And I think that'll make a great, really gelled, really well-conditioned, strong offensive line group for this year.
The depth of it is very interesting. And of course, Henry brought up Cam Pringle, another 4-star offensive lineman who, look, Josiah Thompson was a 5-star guy. And people think Thompson could start this year. I've been saying, look, I get it, 5-star offensive lineman, a lot of skill, a lot of potential, totally get it, but yeah, it's the SEC, man. I mean, the kid Proctor at Alabama was a 5-star last year. They shoved him out of left tackle, and he struggled a bunch, especially early. Finally started to get it together later in the year, but it's just, I mean, I don't care if you're a 5-star, 10-star, 15-star. Playing the offensive line in the SEC, especially tackle, with some of these guys coming off the edge in this conference, it's tough. It just is. In a perfect world, Josiah Thompson sits and watches. But he's got a ton of ability. And you look at this deal, Tree Babalade shouldn't have played last year. The good news about that, because, again, Tree, he showed you flashes, but also struggled a lot, was he got experience. He got to get out there, and for the good, the bad, the pretty, and the ugly, he got to roll in the SEC against some true edge talent. So he's got experience that really nobody thought he would get because the goal was not to play Tree. Kamar Bell comes in from the transfer portal. A lot of people really like Bell. There's some early depth charts where Bell could be a starter. Rashawn Lee, last year, started off at center, moved out to right tackle. The best all-around offensive lineman probably last year at South Carolina. We talked about Cam Pringle being a freshman, probably won't see the field. Ja'Kai Moore is he might be the odd man out of a lot of things. And Moore's played all over the offensive line. But he had his struggles last year, too. Marquis Anderson, we don't talk about. There was a discussion about him maybe playing guard last year if he could have stayed healthy, the freshman Anderson. A lot of folks really like Marquis Anderson. See where that goes. I mean, there's a ton of depth here. When you talk about Case and Henry, who we're listening to right now, if Henry's healthy, a lot of people who follow this program closely and watch a lot of things believe that Henry will start a tackle. Torricelli Simpkins, he's getting some sniffs from NFL scouts as he transfers in and comes up a level. We'll see where Simpkins could fit. He's going to be in the starter at center, and Lee could move to guard. Trevon Ball, another guy that shouldn't have played last year, but he got experience. And again, he has some good moments and some really rough moments. So that's where you're at here. You're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't bring up Aaron Parks, the Oklahoma transfer. Throw him in. That's 5. Marquis Anderson, 6. Ja'Kai Moore, 7. Tree, Bell, 8, 9. Lee, 10. There's 10 offensive linemen we just talked about. And I keep saying this. Out of these 10 guys, with the potential, the experience, and the transfer portal productivity, you got to be able to find 5, right? That just can be solid. You just want solid, which would be a heck of a lot better than you had last year. All right, Case and Henry, final little cut from Case and Henry, Dave. Let's go to cut 12. Case and Henry's thoughts on the new starting quarterback, Lenoris Sellers. Hit it.
So I think the biggest thing for Lenoris was he was kind of taking a back seat to Spencer earlier in his career. And I think he's really grown into the leadership role this year. During spring ball, he grew exponentially as a leader of the offense in my eyes and really took command of the offense. And that made me really proud. And he's done a great job so far. We do conditioning with him and stuff. Like, he does all the cadences. He's loud. He takes control. He knows everything down pat. He's about as physically impressive a guy that I've seen in college at this point. Handles everything pretty easy in the weight room. So, I mean, he's overall does everything right. You never hear me. He's never on any lists. You never hear anything bad about him. So, I mean, that's what you look for out of a quarterback. He's the ideal guy. And I'm excited to block for him this year, and I think he'll do a great job.
You hear nothing but positive so far, Lenoris Sellers. You just heard it there from his teammate. Look, is Case and Henry going to pop on the air on Garnet Trust Hour, and Chris Clark's going to look over at Case and Henry? Tell me about the new starting quarterback, Lenoris Sellers. He's a disaster. Of course not. Not going to hear that. But you've heard nothing but positives about work ethic of Lenoris Sellers, leadership, and we've talked about his ability to run, his arm talent. All these things are there. First guy, last guy when it comes to work. We've heard nothing but positives, intangible-wise, on the field, in the weight room, in the classroom. All these things have been just thumbs up on Lenoris Sellers. And he got to sit last year and watch Spencer Rattler. Look, I've said this a million times. We talked about it a ton when Rattler was, getting picked apart by the NFL people. And the idea that Spencer Rattler fell in the draft, and one of the reasons was the stuff in a stupid documentary when he was a teenager, to me might be the most asinine thing I've ever heard. And I'm not just saying that 'cause I'm sitting here in Columbia, South Carolina. I would have said that anywhere. The fact that you are sitting down as a scout and actually putting in a report Negatives. Well, he's in that documentary when he was 17. Okay. What does that have to do with now? Well, that documentary, you're fired. It's just stupid. You talk to anybody around that program, and they'll tell you that the one thing about Rattler was his leadership abilities, the positivity, the way he carried himself. You saw, just watch games. The body language when they were like, he gets sacked or hit for the 37th time in a row. Things weren't going well for the offense. You never saw him ever give you bad body language, throwing stuff on the sidelines, losing his composure. It was always about, remember the time when Harbor dropped that pass against Texas A&M and he went over there, put his arm around Nick, started talking to him. And then Harbor made some plays. So Lenore Sellers got to watch Spencer Rattler and how Rattler handled his business. And I just think that's invaluable. I really do. And I think that helps you to get to sit a year and listen and learn. And that's another thing I think will help Lenore Sellers. I will get back in here at time for our Firehouse Sub text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Also, we'll spin away from Gamecocks maybe also for a second. Very interesting introduction yesterday in the NBA. You got introduced to a player you've known for a long time in a new spot and some of the thoughts that go behind that. We'll try to get to that as well. Firehouse Sub text the hour coming up, though, at 803-404-6100. Halftime show. Terry Ford, David Daris here helping out. We go to 3 on the game. Firehouse sub text of the hour at 803-404-6100. Here we go. This is a good one. You guys should ask players about their recent Pilates training next time. Pilates training strengthens from the core out and works to strengthen the small stabilizer muscles that are often neglected in standard weight training and protect the large global muscles. The facility has a Pilates trainer coming in 2 times a week since June. Thank you very much. Excellent text. It's funny. Like, I remember when Jason Kidd kind of resurrected his NBA career. And the New Jersey Nets were playing in the finals, and they were talking to Kidd about, about how he's, kind of got himself, back to where he once was and things of that nature. And he said one of the things he started doing was he started doing Pilates. And just what, the texter described, it works with a lot of muscles that, are good for functional strength and muscles you don't use like in weightlifting and things of that nature. And look, people who do Pilates like swear by it. I've been told as I've gotten older that I should be, kicking yoga and Pilates and stuff like that. And I can't even spell Pilates. But, the Pilates thing especially, I don't know if I might kill myself. But I know guys who have said to me, man, I started doing yoga and Pilates, and I'm telling you, I feel like a new dude. So, yeah, I think that kind of stuff, to the point of the texter, it helps because it's about, the small muscles, the functionality, just kind of like the core, and working the core is like a huge thing. It really is. And so all those things go together, where Pilates, a lot of professional athletes now are doing yoga and Pilates.
Oh, man, I could have asked Luke Doty. He's right down the hall.
I bet you Luke Doty does Pilates.
He goes surfing, I know that.
Surfing's good for the core. Do you ever go surfing? I should not be doing this. Dave, tell us a great story about when you went surfing.
So I was down at the beach. This is 1975, and I wanted to try surfing. And then I made the mistake of going to see a big movie that year called Jaws. Ruined the entire beach vacation.
Not
Never
down with the surfing after that? So you didn't try the surfing, is that what you're telling me?
Did not, no. No.
I can't believe the thought of being eaten by a shark stopped you from getting in the water. Back, what was that, 76 when Jaws came out? Something like that?
Whatever year that was, yeah.
Sometime in the 70s. See, you're a little bit older than me.
Yeah.
Nah. And so I was a little Terry Ford when that movie came out.
Yeah.
Scared the bejesus out of the little Terry Ford, by the way.
Yep.
Let's go in the swimming pool. No, I'm not going to go in the swimming pool. There'll be a shark in there. Come on, don't be a pussy man.
My daughter was always scared to get in the shower because she thought a shark might come up through the drain. I don't know.
Remember that Saturday Night Live bit about the shark?
Yes.
That was pretty
Land
fun.
shark.
Land shark. That was good.
Candy Graham.
So it was so good. So basically, you didn't go surfing. You never tried surfing because of Jaws.
That's correct.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Of course, at Myrtle Beach, you kind of have to wait. I mean, those waves are not huge.
I won't lie to you. Never tried surfing. Yeah. Did the boogie boarding stuff. Did the jet ski thing when I was younger. A couple summers.
Love jet skis.
It's fun, man. That's fun.
Wave runners.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a good time. But I never did the surfing.
Now's your chance.
You know what? No, I'm not going to do it now. No,
he'll be happy to take it.
I'm not doing it now because you got Jaws in my head. Now I'm scared I'm going to get eaten by a shark if I go surfing. Thanks, Dave. You've ruined my. I try to go to the beach every summer. I'm not going to go in the water now, and I blame you. This is your fault, a dare.
All right.
Oh, man. So let's see. The surfing story got screwed up by Jaws. You went to Dallas and you didn't do much of anything, but, Go over to the plaza.
Boring stories. I could tell you about Washington, D.C. 2 trips to Washington.
Really? Oh, you know what, Dave? The music's playing. I would love to hear your Washington, D.C. story. What a shame. We've only got 22 seconds.
Yeah.
Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Dave will hang for another segment, then he's going to piece on out of here. Then I will try to not run this thing into the ground. Then Elijah will come in at 2. It's a halftime show with Terry Ford till 3 here on the game. Halftime show with Terry Ford till 3 here on the game. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Obviously, SEC Media Days next week, so everybody starts there predicting. The media and the coaches next week will have their prediction of finishes, all SEC teams, things of that nature. We're going to get to, we talked a lot about what Phil Steele said when the book first came out, the magazine, because it's the Bible of college football. Also, I think with Wes, GamecockCentral.com, picked through it as well and put up some thoughts. Some of those we already talked about, but we'll get to some of the things that Wes brought up that we haven't had a chance to yip about yet. We'll get to that this hour. But first, Brad Crawford from 24/7 Sports was on with Jay and Elijah yesterday. Brad had some bold predictions he was throwing out, part of his recent post on 24/7. We'll start off with Cut 15, Dave. Brad Crawford talking about the Gamecocks' bowl chances.
Yeah, Gamecocks getting a bowl invite, man. To be honest with you, for the last 5 or 6 months, I go through every SEC schedule. I predict these wins, losses for every team. I've hit South Carolina a lot in my career these last, decade plus. But I didn't feel good about Gamecocks' bowl chances until, speaking to a few other staffers here recently. They really feel confident, man, inside that locker room that they can start September hot, possibly win that road game at Kentucky. And Jay, I've been saying all summer, man, that's the most important game of the year, and it's only week 2 for South Carolina.
Right.
I mean, you start off 1-0, then all of a sudden the LSU game, while it's a winnable game, it's not a must-win. But you start 0-1 in Lexington, you come back home to Williams-Brice, you have to be LSU because it's going to be very hard to, pull out of an 0-2 SEC hole and still get to 6 wins.
Yeah, I think all of us, look, it's so tough to predict this out. I mean, even if you go through the season, it's so tough to predict it out. Last year it felt like it was a little easier because of just the way the schedule played, the way things were going with the team. Last year was a little, the year before, again, you come off a terrible showing against Florida where you look like, you look bad everywhere. Pick the department. South Carolina struggled in Gainesville. Then you got Tennessee rolling in, and they're just boat racing folks. And very few people gave you a chance to win that football game outside of your facility. And what'd you do? You went out there and you took the Volunteers to the woodshed. It's so tough at times to pick these games. It just is, especially in today's world of sports. But it does feel like that Kentucky game in week 2, at least right now as we speak, is so important, like Brad Crawford said. And, Jay and I have talked about it, Elijah and Tyler and Bill and Preston and everyone has talked about it here, that if you lose that game, and yeah, it's on the road. If you lose that game, then you're facing LSU at home with the possibility of going 0-2 in the SEC. If you can find a way to beat Kentucky, now you put that game in your pocket, and if you do lose to LSU, it's all right. You got a road win. LSU's favored, even if it's your barn, but they're still favored. And if you lose, you're 1-1, but you're all right. And the Kentucky game, because so many metrics have South Carolina and Kentucky so even at this point, looking into the season. And if you can find a way on the road to beat that team, because that team is looking at you the same way. The people in Lexington, Kentucky, because they're still talking football right now because it's not basketball season yet, so there's a little bit of football talk. They will say that Kentucky at home should beat South Carolina. They're probably putting it as a W on their predicting schedules. So it's that kind of a game. If you can win it to get yourself to 1-0 in the league and get that W in your pocket to go with the other 4 you think you should win, then you're feeling pretty good about maybe you snag that other victory to get to the 6 wins and get you back to a bowl game. So a lot of people talk about how important that Kentucky game is. Now we might get to the season and the whole thing changes for whatever reason. South Carolina is much better than anybody thought. And maybe all this that we're looking at now, we'll look at different. We'll see. But right now, it feels like that Kentucky game is really important. Even though it's the second game of the season, it does feel like that could be a game to swing things one way or the other for you as you move through the year. Also, Brad Crawford, talking about the defense, we all feel like, and I think most fans do too, the defense looks like it should be much better on paper than it was last year. Well, I should say the first 2 months of last year. Defense got much better in November. And with the additions to the defense on the defensive front / the edge and at the linebacker position, and the fact you're only replacing one guy in the secondary, you feel like the defense should be good. Here's Brad Crawford talking about, and this would be what did I say, Dave? Cut 16. How good can this defense be?
Yeah, I feel considerably more confident on the defensive side of the ball than I do offensive, as far as, Gamecocks defense can finish in that top 8, the mid to top tier of the SEC on that side. Clayton White obviously, struggled the first 6 or 7 weeks last season, and then he found something in mid-October. I think a lot of it was the schedule lightened up a bit, but putting that fifth defensive back on the field seemed to really help this defense. The Gamecocks were flying around, something they didn't do the first half of the 2023 slate. And like you said, there's a ton of starters back. They've added those 2 quality linebackers from the portal. Tonka Hemingway's a guy that I spoke to a NFL draft analyst a couple weeks ago, and he thinks Tonka Hemingway is someone who can creep into that late first round range if he has a good final season. And then of course there's Dylan Stewart. Clayton White did not have a 5-star talented edge rusher that he could just throw out there, 15 to 20 snaps a game last season. Now he has that. I don't think he has to lean on Dylan Stewart to be a superstar, but watching that kid in the spring game, he's somebody the Gamecocks can use and use immediately on that side of the ball.
Yeah, Dylan Stewart's an X factor because that's a legit 5-star recruit, and we saw him in the spring game, do a lot of good things off the edge. And we'll see moving forward what that does once this thing gets going for real. But to Brad's point, you didn't have a Dylan Stewart of talent like that. You didn't have a Kyle Kennard. You didn't have a veteran guy who has proven that he can cause problems as an edge defender. You didn't have that guy. How will Des Yu develop and improve in year 2? The hope is, there's a lot of physical ability there. How about a Brian Thomas? How about a Gilbert Edmond we're not even talking about, who was starting to really show some promise a couple of years ago before he transferred to Florida State? The edge is just in a much better position. And you got to get something out of the edge consistently. You just do. You need guys who are, taking snaps off the edge who can cause some real problems. And I think they've got the potential to get that. Now, defensively overall, look, the end of the year, if you go back to, you started November 4th. You played Jacksonville State. You did give up some points, but you got the big play on defense by Stone Blanton at the end, the pick 6. You didn't give up an offensive touchdown. Vanderbilt scored 6 points. Kentucky scored 14. You did not give up an offensive touchdown to Clemson. That's really good defense, especially the last 3 games. Again, are you facing 3 offensive juggernauts? No. But you shut them down. You absolutely shut them down. Defensively, the 3-3-5, some tweaks in the back end, coverage-wise, all those things went together, and the defense played really well. Now you have to carry that momentum. You should be better also, linebacker-wise, you're deeper. So it feels like your defense is going to be a lot better. And the linebacker thing, when we talk about trouble stopping the run, and South Carolina has had trouble consistently stopping the run the last few years, part of that is linebacker play. You've had injuries at linebacker, lack of depth at linebacker, and it's bit you. But when you add, Knight and Bengali out of the portal, you have a couple of young ones and Johnson and Gregory coming in. Maybe Mo Kaba can bounce back and give you something as he's trying to work his way back from the ACL. You just have a more depth in the linebacker room to go with Debo Williams. And linebackers are really important in the run game, too. It's not just the guys up front. Linebackers have to be able to diagnose. They have to be able to, fill the right gap. They have to be able to make plays close to the line of scrimmage, what we call havoc plays or tackles for loss. Linebackers, tackles 6 yards down the field. Again, they're tackles. You're happy they make them. But you want tackles within 2 or 3 yards of the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. The tackle stat is one of the most misleading stats in football. It's where are your tackles? Are they impactful? Do you make them, again, 6 yards downfield? Or if you're making a big tackle 4 yards down the field, is it on a 3rd and 5 play where you stopped someone short of a first down? Are you making impactful, game-changing plays when you make tackles? That's what South Carolina needs in the first 2 levels of their defense. Game-changing plays. And I think this year they have more of a depth of talent to make those kind of plays. So Brad Crawford, couple of cuts. Brad has some more cuts too we're going to get to, as Brad also talked about the differences in the scheme on offense and what that's going to mean, and also his bold prediction about South Carolina. So we'll get that coming back. Brad Crawford of 24/7 talking to Jay and Elijah on the postgame show. And we'll have a couple more cuts from Brad in the next segment. Craft and Draft on Divine Street. The postgame show will be there Friday from 3 to 6. Jay and Elijah doing the show. I'm guessing they will be forced to sample craft beer. So Jay and Elijah will do that. And we have craft beer passports as well. Basically, if you haven't heard of that, saying, Terry, what's a craft beer passport, bub? 12 locations. $30 a location. That's $360 of drinking craft beer. You get it for $79. You just go to 1075 The Game. You click on Sweet Deals. You find that craft beer passport. You can get it right there. And if you love craft beer, that's a magnificent bargain. And we only have a few of craft beer passports left, so you might want to jump in and get it while the getting's still good. You don't want to go there and say, oh, bleep, they're all sold out. So check out the Craft Beer Passport at 1075thegame.com with Sweet Deals, and go hang out with Jay and Elijah at Craft and Draft on Divine in Columbia, 3 to 6 this Friday. We'll come back. Here's some more from Brad Crawford of 24/7. His bold prediction about South Carolina and the defense. That's coming up next. Halftime show. Terry Ford, thank you very much for your help, Dave. Your stories, I don't have words. I just don't have words for just how compelling they were. All right, we'll jump in here. Continue on with football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors on The Game. halftime show. Terry Ford, glad you're going to be hanging out. We do this football thing. In the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit. No, we're not yet. Let's continue to listen to Brad Crawford. Then we're going to get to some SEC Media Day stuff. Not SEC, Big 12 Media Days. But back to Brad Crawford, 24/7 Sports, on the postgame show yesterday with Jay and Elijah, talking about South Carolina. And Brad had a bold prediction for the Gamecocks about their defense. It involves the linebacker room. And here's Brad Crawford talking about his bold prediction.
Yeah, it feels like it's been forever, really almost 2 coaching cycles since the Gamecocks have had a true difference maker at that position. Sky Moore, I mean, he was a guy that led the team in interceptions at that one season as an all-SEC player. But I think right now this is the deepest linebacker room South Carolina's had, certainly under Shane Beamer, possibly under the previous regime as well. I mean, Bam Martin-Scott's a guy who is going to take a major leap this season into that starting role. Debo Williams obviously is one of the SEC's hardest hitters and has shown flashes in recent years. But the 2 guys I'm looking at, man, are Demetrius Knight, transfer from Georgia Tech, who, you know, Nicky Minwari has said on social media and various times this offseason that, you know, Demetrius Knight's a guy who is going to be quite impactful at that position. And then Bengali Kamara, a linebacker from Pitt who's been uber productive in the ACC previously. So Gamecocks go about 4 deep at that position, feel really good about it. And I think, you know, Shane Beamer may not have felt that way 5 or 6 months ago when he lost 2 linebackers to the portal. But the 2 guys he replaced them with are pretty darn talented players, and I think it's a position group that is no longer a weakness in Columbia.
Not that Brad cares. I totally agree. I think the linebacker position is going to be, look, last year, and look, Debo, God love him, he ran around like a man whose hair was on fire. And he played a lot of snaps, a ton of effort. There were times Debo was a difference maker, and times he kind of got caught up in the wash and things of that nature. But Debo, with effort and intensity, there's so much positive of Debo Williams. But, you know, Stone Blanton, he gave it, and look, he tried his best. And Stone Blanton, just athletically, there was some things there. I mean, Blanton made that big play against Jacksonville State, yes. But Stone Blanton, the eye test, you looked at the grades from Pro Football Focus, reading what scouts would say. Stone Blanton, just athletically, he's not to the level of a Knight, a Kamara, a Bam Martin-Scott, even the freshmen that have come in, Gregory and Johnson. You have more athleticism now to go with Debo Williams. And, yes, you have to be able to do the technical aspects of football. Being athletic doesn't mean everything. It's great, but you also have to be able to, be good at football. You just can't be an athlete running around doing stuff. But they have athleticism to go with production with this crew. You've seen the production of Knight and Kamara, at their previous stops. You saw when Debo Williams has developed over the last few years, and if he can take that next step in development to go with his athleticism and his intensity, Debo Williams could be scary if he can take that next step. And Bam Martin-Scott, switching that 3-3-5 unleashed Bam Martin-Scott. And we know Bam Martin-Scott's a very athletic guy. And we saw the plays he was making, whether it was sacks, tackles behind the line of scrimmage, just causing havoc in general, blowing up stuff. So this linebacker crew, there's something there. It really is. It's not just, hope the linebackers can hold their own. It's like, I hope the linebackers can make some real difference-making plays. And you can see where Brad's going with the potential at the linebacker position this year, which is the best in Shane's 3 years, obviously. All right, also Brad Crawford from 24/7 Sports on the postgame show with Jay and Elijah talked about the offense and how it's going to be different this year with Lenora Sellers compared to, Shane Spencer Rattler running the offense. And here is Brad Crawford talking about the South Carolina offense.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more zone read and option type plays out of this offense. You know, I think for the most part last season and the year before that with Marcus Satterfield, South Carolina tried to keep Spencer Rattler upright as much as possible. He didn't run the ball much. There certainly was not a ton of quarterback design runs. That's going to change a good bit with Lenore Sellers and Robbie Astor, the Auburn transfer, behind him. You know, I think this offensive staff is going to do whatever it can to keep Lenore Sellers healthy. However, this guy's big, man. He's almost 6'5", 250 pounds. He's going to be able to take a hit, and he's somebody who I think can get 10 to 12 carries a game. Obviously, the backfield is brand new with 3 transfers there. So, I mean, South Carolina's going to enter that season opener next month against Old Dominion with, 3 ball carriers that it feels really good about, and a quarterback making his first career start that is a true dual threat, probably the first, the Gamecocks have had in several seasons. So I think he's going to fall short of 3,000 yards passing because I don't think that's the recipe for success for this Gamecock offense. I think you're going to see more balance, maybe 60-40 run pass. And, if these 3 transfers are as good as advertised in the backfield, this running game should be light years better than it has been in recent years.
Yeah, and to Brad's point, I mean, Phil Steele has the South Carolina run game as maybe being the most improved run game in the country because, let's face it, it wasn't very good last year. It has the potential this year to be very good. Brad talked about Lenore Sellers and what he can do with his legs. You got Rocket Sanders if healthy. You've got depth behind Sanders with some guys who either have done it in the group of 5 or on the FCS level. You've got a DJ Braswell coming back last year as a sophomore, Juju McDowell with what he can do, put, in the correct position to succeed. And then you've also got, some freshman talent as well. So a lot of possibilities in the run game for South Carolina. And like Brad said, you feel like the way this thing is made up with Sellers' running skills to go with the deep backfield and Sellers, just starting his journey as a QB1. Maybe there'll be a lot more running than throwing, which is the opposite of what we've seen the last 2 years. And maybe it'll be the run game that this team leans on, especially in September as they're trying to figure out what's going on with all the question marks on the offensive side of the ball with the wide receivers and the offensive line and the quarterback, to be fair. So good stuff from Brad Crawford, 24/7 Sports, on with Jay and Elijah on the postgame show yesterday. All right, coming up, Big 12 Media Days. Mike Gundy talked. He sure did. We'll get to some Mike Gundy talking about his star running back, Ollie Gordon, and what is Ollie Gordon's punishment from Mike Gundy stemming from Gordon's DUI. We'll hear Mike Gundy do the Mike Gundy. That's coming up. Football in the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. It's Terry Ford, halftime show till 3 here on the game. What you're talking about and I'm talking about and we're all talking about is football in the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford, glad you could be hanging on the halftime show. Big 12 media days. Yesterday got cooking. Mike Gundy talked to the media. Oklahoma State head coach. You know, I'm a man. I'm 40. Mullet Gundy. A few years ago, remember, he wore that T-shirt that drove some of his players crazy. Gundy now is talking about Ollie Gordon. Look, Ollie Gordon is arguably the best running back in the country coming into the season. And Mike Gundy obviously wants Ollie Gordon on the field. And Ollie Gordon in the offseason got himself a DUI. So Mike Gundy was asked, well, you know, what's the deal on the punishment through the football program for Ollie Gordon? And here is what Mike Gundy, there's two parts of this. Here's part one of what Mike Gundy had to say.
We're in a time where you guys are essentially employees. You guys make lots of money to play this game. It's different than it was 5 years ago. And your punishment's going to be facing the facts. That's why we brought him here today. I said, you're not going into hiding. You're going to face the music. You're going to have to stand up and talk to people and answer questions. And hopefully, more than football, you can learn from the situation you've been in. Because if not, then we have a real issue. But he's going to play. And I'm going to do what we think is best for Oklahoma State football. And I think it's best for Ollie to play. If there's any punishment, it's make him carry the ball 50 times in the first game.
There's some punishment right there. We're going to punish you by giving you the football 50 times. That's going to be your punishment. I hope you've learned a lesson. We're going to let you play and carry the ball 50 times. Huh? How about us? Let's talk about our punishment. Look, the NFL punishes guys for off-the-field stuff, and they make a hell of a lot more money than college players. Just saying. That excuse is so weak and so lame. But Mike Gundy did tell the truth at the beginning. What's in the best interest of Oklahoma State football is Ollie Gordon on the field toting the rock. That's just it. That's it. Mike Gundy's doing what's best for his one-loss record, for the salary he makes, and for the football team's success. Ollie Gordon plays. To hell with all the other stuff. What matters is getting Ollie Gordon on the field on Saturday to help Oklahoma State win. All the rest of that's just fertilizer and ridiculousness. It just is. Again, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just ridiculous. We're going to teach them a lesson by coming here and answering questions. Yeah, I'll stop them. It's just silly. It's a silly answer. Just you could have cut that answer down and just said this. Look, guys, I'm going to be straight up with you. Having Ollie Gordon on the field, we're a better team. We want to win the Big 12. We want the best one-loss record possible. We want to see if we can get ourselves in a college football playoff. Ollie Gordon helps us do all that. The DUI, we'll deal with it off the field, but he will be on the field playing football. Because that is what we want, the university wants, the fan base wants. That's what it's all about. I'm just being 100% honest with you. I would go, okay. Doesn't matter if I agree or disagree with you. What matters, that's the way you're going to go, and you're just telling me the truth. All this other stuff is whatever. Just like the next thing Mike Gundy says, as he's doing the Mike Gundy. And he goes into a deeper dive on the Gordon DUI.
So, the college football is changing, we all know. And we can say these guys aren't employees, but they're really employees. These guys get paid a lot of money, which is fine. But there needs to be a side to what they do that they have to be able to, for lack of a better term, face the music and own up to things. And when I looked at it, I thought, okay, I'm going to be real honest with myself first, and then make the best decision for what I think is good for Ollie, our university, and our team. And then I start thinking about being a parent. I have a 28, I have a 23, and a 19. And first I thought, okay, so I looked it up on my phone. What would be the legal limit? Like in Oklahoma is 0.08, in Ollie was 0.1. So I looked it up, and it was based on body weight. Not to get into the legal side of it, but I thought really 2 or 3 beers or 4. I'm not justifying what Ollie did. I'm telling you what decision I made. Well, I thought I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life. And I, it's just fine. So I got lucky. People get lucky. Ollie made a decision that he wished he could have done better. But when I talked to Ollie, I told him, I said, you're lucky you got out light because you make a lot of money to play football. So back in the day, being able to cover the cost of what he's going to go through would be difficult for a college player. It's not for him.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not speaking for him, but I'm just saying that's not an issue for him. So nobody got hurt. I said, we see people doing this and people losing their lives across the country, not just football players, but everybody. So you got out lucky.
Yeah, you did. Ollie Gordon got out lucky. He didn't get into a huge accident, and nobody died. He didn't die. He wasn't hurt in an accident to where he couldn't play football again. He didn't hurt someone else to where they couldn't function as a human being again. Yes, Ollie got lucky. That's your message? Mike Gundy? That's the message? And to make sure he doesn't do it again, here's the punishment. We're going to make you answer questions at Big 12 Media Day, and we're going to give you the football 50 times. Woo! That'll stop him from doing it again. And then look, Mike Gundy being honest about drinking a few beers and getting in a car and driving. A lot of people who have in their lives gone out to bars, to clubs, whatever, have had a few beers, 2, 3 beers, and have gotten in a car and driven. Yeah. I mean, that's, if we're going to be honest, sure. You go meet up with a buddy of yours, have a beer, maybe have 2, maybe after work, and you drive on home. It's done by a lot of folks all over the world. So Mike Gundy being real to that point, okay. But then, of course, being Mike Gundy, I've done that 1,000 times. Matter of fact, I just did it coming over here. What do you... This Mike Gundy being Mike Gundy. I just, it was almost like one of those things where you're thinking, okay, Mike, you've made the point. You could have made it in a much shorter time frame. Now just you can stop now and move on to the next topic for Oklahoma State. Because again, there are a lot of people also, and this is something again, Mike Gundy, you got to think, man. There are a lot of people in this country who have also either had themselves or loved ones or family affected by a drunk driver. I know a good amount of people who have had that happen. And for you to sit and say what you're saying, you're not thinking, Mike. You're not thinking about those people. At one point, you go, oh, you're really lucky. A lot of these things happen. Yeah, they do. So there is a consequence if you drink too much and you're, legally drunk and you can't handle a vehicle. Bad things can happen. And what's the lesson here to Ollie Gordon? Man, I'll tell you what, you got lucky. And the luckiest thing for you is you're a football player at Oklahoma State for Mike Gundy, because really your punishment is come answer questions at Big 12 Media Day, and then we're going to give you the ball 50 times. And look, I understand fans. I do. You get them on the field. We want to win. We want to win. Nobody got hurt. We want to win. I get it. But there's a bigger picture here that you have to balance all that together if you're a football coach. You're a coach in general, and you got a guy that has a DUI. You got to balance the fact that he's a college student. I don't care how much money he makes. He's still a college student playing college football. You got to balance that to again, what are you showing the rest of the team? What if the backup long snapper gets caught for a DUI? Does he get the same punishment as Ollie Gordon, or does he get a different punishment because he's not Ollie Gordon? I mean, look at Georgia here for a while. Everybody's getting behind the car, after drinking a bunch. And Georgia had a huge issue because of a driving thing. So again, there's so much more bigger topics and conversations and issues here than just, hey, I get the guy on the field who's got to win. But that's really what this is. Putting winning football games over the rest of it. And isn't there a way you can punish your guy so there is a punishment and win football games? Just saying. So just Mike Gundy doing the Mike Gundy. And no one's going to, at Stillwater, call him out on it or criticize him for it or anything of that nature because, again, just like pretty much all football fan bases or fans, you just love W's. And that's more important. Unless the bad thing off the field is something that is near and dear to your heart, then you would have a different thought process. That's just Mike Gundy. Talking about Ollie Gordon at Big 12 Media Days. We'll come back. Firehouse sub text the hour 803-404-6100. Might sneak in maybe a Kyle Winningham. He talked to the media as well. So it's football in the 1 o'clock hour. Terry Ford, glad you could be hanging as we roll up until 3 on the game. Football in the 1 o'clock hour here on the Halftime Show, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Time for our Firehouse subtext of the hour, 803-404-6100. About Mike Gundy. I bet Gundy sings that beer song and says 1,000 beers on the wall while driving home. Yeah, he's done it 1,000 times. Also, Mike Gundy is the Wish Mike Leach. You know, the one thing that I think Gundy and Mike Leach both did is they spoke their mind. And, you know, like, every now and then did Leach say something where everybody went, oh, Mike. But it seems like, and look, we don't hear Mike Gundy every week talk to the media like we do like Shane or the coaches in the SEC or whatever the case. But it feels like every time you hear Mike Gundy, he says stuff where you go, oh. Mike Leach was funny, was interesting, compelling. Mike Gundy just makes you go, oh, wow, Mike. But they both speak their mind. I guess that's one thing we can say. Well, that was Mike Gundy at Big 12 Media Days just a few minutes ago talking about the punishment or lack of Ollie Gordon. All right, let's continue the theme of Big 12 Media Days. Kyle Whittingham, the head coach at Utah, you know, they have officially set up the Kyle Whittingham coach in waiting, which I love coaches in waiting. It entertains me because a lot of times the coach in waiting never becomes the head coach. Remember, Will Muschamp was the coach in waiting at Texas. How'd that work? Yeah. James Franklin was a coach in waiting at Maryland. How many games did he coach at Maryland? Exactly, as many as me. Every now and then it actually does work, like Jimbo Fisher at Florida State. Or like Duke did in basketball, succeeding Coach K. I mean, it happens sometimes, but I think most of the time the coach in waiting never becomes the head coach. Mike Hopkins was a coach in waiting for Jim Boeheim at Syracuse for basketball. Said, I'm tired of waiting. I'm going to go be the head coach at Washington. So, coach in waiting, well, we'll see. But Kyle Whittingham, still the head coach at Utah, one of the best head coaches in America, by the way. A lot of people think Utah could go into the Big 12 and win the conference. They play like Big 12. The Big 12, remember, used to be a lot of offense and nobody played defense, right? The defense has gotten better the last couple of years in the Big 12. Utah, they always seem to be the most physical team in the Pac-12, right? And when they had Cam Rising at quarterback, that offense was pretty productive to go with a physical defense. And plus, Utah always had a toughness about him with Kyle Whittingham. Felt like Utah was the guy you walked up to in the bar and you kicked him in the lower extremities and he'd just look at you for a second and smile and then hit himself. And you thought, oh my God, I'm dead. And Kyle Whittingham has fostered that type of toughness. Remember, people forget Urban Meyer started that at Utah. They made a BCS bowl game at Utah with Alex Smith at quarterback, and then, of course, Urban left, and Kyle Whittingham's been there ever since. Well, here's Kyle Whittingham talking about the experience of jumping into a new league.
Yeah, it's a transition we have made before, although when we went to the Big 12 or the Pac-12, we were a G5 school trying to come up a level, which there was a little bit of a curve there that we had to endure. This is actually the fourth conference I've been in since I've been at Utah. We were in the WAC, then the Mountain West, then the Pac-12, now the Big 12. So nothing new for me personally as far as changing leagues, but we feel like we've got a roster that's equipped to compete right away. Obviously, I guess the media feels the same way, being picked as the favorite, and I think that's a show of respect to our players and coaches that have done a great job competing through the years that the media has selected as number one. But in the final analysis, that doesn't mean anything. Obviously, you got to play the games, and our players are fully aware of that. But again, it's a nice show of respect for our program from the media.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think Utah could win the Big 12, and obviously they're being picked preseason to win the Big 12. Now, you have to sit right. If you're Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, You're sitting around going, really? You just going to waltz into the Big 12 and think you're going to like win the championship? But I think Utah could. Now, we say Texas is going to have a hard time in the SEC because it's the SEC. I mean, if you look at the Big Ten, Oregon is, making that transition. Ohio State feels like the most talented team in the Big Ten. Michigan, I think, falls back a peg without Harbaugh, and they lost a lot of players on the national championship squad. Penn State is Penn State until proven otherwise. They're the best of the level 2. So you could see Oregon with all that talent and kind of a certain mindset that Oregon has under Dan Lanning, maybe to come in and do something. But Utah, a lot of people believe, will win the Big 12. All right, that's it for football. We'll come back. What's trending at 2 with Elijah on the game.
Halftime show, hour number 3. Doing what's trending at 2. If you're wondering, wow, Terry sounds a lot younger from last hour to this hour. From the last 2 hours to this hour, no, your ears aren't deceiving you. I'm Elijah Campbell filling in for Terry for a couple segments while he has what I like to call suit stuff. He gets to do the fun administrative work, like meetings and wearing dress shirts and wearing shoes in the building. I don't have to do that. But while he takes care of that, I will take you here through the next couple segments all the way up until we get to the greatest day in the history of the world coming up at 2:30 at the bottom of the hour. But what's trending at 2, and for July, we have a pretty active sports July if you think about it. Olympics are coming up. Euro's happening. Got a big game coming up here in about an hour. England and the Netherlands are going to be playing for the right to play Spain for the Euro Championship. And selfishly, I would like to see England beat the Netherlands so we can get a Spain-England final so I can make Spanish Armada jokes. Selfishly, I kind of like to see that. But what's trending at 2 right now, one of the biggest news in sports in the last 24 hours or so is Kawhi Leonard out of the Olympics. Big news, but not surprising news. Now, for anyone who keeps up with the NBA, Kawhi Leonard hasn't necessarily been notorious for playing a lot of basketball. He misses a lot of time each and every year ever since he joined the Los Angeles Clippers. He played 57 games his first season, 52 the second. Didn't play for all of 21-22 because of a torn ACL in the playoffs the year before. Played 52 games the next year, and then played a whopping 68 of the 82 games this past season. He does not play a lot of basketball. For someone who is paid to play basketball, injuries or air quotes, load management, whatever it is, has kept him out of playing a decent amount of basketball. He was going to play on the Olympic team as part of what I consider to be one of the more loaded rosters of our lifetime. I don't think it's necessarily 2012 when it comes to depth and overall talent of the Team USA Olympic basketball team. But this is up there. This team, as it was originally constructed, definitely up there in terms of name recognition, talent, NBA experience, and production, age. A lot of that. So when Kawhi Leonard played, I figured, we might have like a Larry Bird situation. And for those who don't remember, the Dream Team in 1992 with Larry Bird on it, he didn't play a lot. He had a pretty bad back, and injuries were starting to take their toll on his career. He was basically named to the Dream Team on name recognition alone because it's the first year you can play professionals in the Olympics. So the more big names, the better, and the Dream Team ended up doing a lot of just that. Magic Johnson, this was post-HIV diagnosis, so he didn't play a ton, but Magic and Larry were on the team, even though they weren't going to be able to give you a ton physically. I figured this might be what Kawhi Leonard was going to look like on this rendition of the Team USA Olympic basketball team. But after a few weeks of practice, he decided to shut it down and try to get healthy for the season. Maybe he'll play more than 68 games in a Clipper jersey. He has not played more than 70 games in a season. Reminder, there are 82 per year in the NBA since 2016-2017. So not necessarily surprising that he is bowing out of the Olympics shortly before they start. And the replacement has already been announced. Derek White, former Spur as well, but current NBA champion with the Boston Celtics, has been announced as his replacement. And honestly, this might be for the better because, A, you can get games and minutes out of him. He's going to be available. If there's anything that you can say Derek White does a lot better than Kawhi Leonard, it's being available and being actually able to play basketball. So he's going to be playing. He is in. I don't think he'll be available for tonight's game because they do play their first friendly before the actual Olympics. They do several showcase games or friendly games before we get into the actual Olympic games themselves. Tonight, they do play at 10:30 for those night owls out there like myself. I'll definitely be tuning in to watch this. They play Canada. That's going to be on Fox Sports 1 after the Copa America game, or after the Copa America game concludes later on tonight. I believe that one starts at 7 or 7:30. But 10:30 expected tip-off for that game, and I don't think Derek White will be able to play, but I think it's a pretty solid addition for Team USA. If you're going to lose Kawhi Leonard, bring in a guy who's not only available, but is a A-plus defender. And for a guy who's only 6'4", in the NBA, 6'4" is like being, 5'8" normally. But at only 6'4", as a shooting guard / point guard, Derek White did get over a block per game and is one of the best defensive players, I believe, in the NBA. 2-time All-Defense and was a vital part to the Celtics winning that NBA championship. So he's going to be replacing Kawhi Leonard here for the Olympic team. Olympics starting up later on this month or next month, back in August. Some more of what's trending. I know we talk a lot about the NCAA football video game, and as we should, selfishly. I mean, as somebody who hasn't played a ton of video games in the last decade, it's getting me to purchase a next-gen console just so I can play this NCAA video game. But one of the biggest opt-outs, not a lot of people opted out because the players got a pretty good deal, right? They got a small sum of money, and they got a free copy of the game in order to use their name, image, and likeness. The whole reason the game wasn't made for the last 10 years is because they were using that illegally. So now they're getting compensated for it, and there's a decent compensation package. And famously, a couple months ago, Arch Manning declined the option to be in the video game, to have his name, image, and likeness used in the video game. And that has all changed with a video overnight. Arch Manning in a commercial, basically in an EA Sports commercial with his uncle Eli, announced that he is actually in the game. I don't know if it was FOMO, if it was anything else, or maybe it was trying to get attention, because I mean, if you recall, one of the reasons why he wasn't going to be in the video game was because he wanted to focus on football. Well, it turns out everybody else can focus on football and still be in the video game, and I guess Arch wanted to get in on that action. For those who haven't gotten to see it, hear it, because audio platform, here's what the commercial sounded like with Eli Manning and Arch Manning announcing that Arch is going to be in the game.
Your eyes on the safety, be vocal out there.
Yes, Coach. I mean, Uncle E.
It's better.
Green 18! Green 18! Omaha?
All right, that's UT quarterback Arch Manning.
Yep, that was Arch Manning announcing that he was going to be, the video of him playing the video game, calls the play, actually throws a touchdown pass. Him and his Uncle Eli celebrate or whatever, and that's how he announces he's going to be in. So Arch Manning in the EA Sports video game. So I guess he can concentrate on being a fictional or a real-life character in a video game and playing football at the same time. For those Braves fans out there, what's trending is Chris Sale, a guy who took a pretty big pay cut to be able to play for the Braves, whose career has taken all types of twists and turns. Talked about Kawhi Leonard in the last segment. This is another guy who has had a hard time actually being on the field for the last few years. A lot of arm issues, a lot of injury issues. But Chris Sale picked up win number 12 last night for the Atlanta Braves and has completely revitalized his career. The numbers are incredibly impressive for somebody who, before this season, had 20 starts last year in Boston, wasn't very good. Only had 2 starts the year prior, 9 starts the year before that, didn't play at all in 2020. For a guy who has, so that's what, combined, live math on air, 31 or so some odd starts in the last 3 years combined. He's already at 17 this year, has 12 wins, which leads all of Major League Baseball, has walks and hits per innings pitched of under 1, and has already struck out 136 batters. He's definitely dipped into the fountain of youth here a little bit at age 35, seemingly past his prime, but Chris Sale has pretty much turned one of the biggest weaknesses of this Atlanta Braves team after Spencer Strider went down due to injury and was announced he was going to miss the entire year early on. Chris Sale, a guy who you thought would just be added to be a back-end rotation guy, has now kind of turned into an ace pitcher. Him and Ronaldo Lopez are being talked about as being starters in the National League for the All-Star game. It's possible. I think Paul Skeens probably gets it for the show. After all, this is entertainment. I think he ultimately ends up starting, but you can make it a legitimate case that Chris Sale or Ronaldo Lopez, 2 Braves pitchers who you did not think would be productive once here in this season. With all the injuries that the Braves had and what was going to be asked of those two pitchers, it's pretty remarkable. I'm not a big pitcher win guy. I think that's the most overrated stat in all of baseball. But for someone like Chris Sale, whose career seemingly was on the out, was fading out, to be able to get 12 wins and to have the ERA numbers that he has, he's a sub-3 ERA, to walk or to give up less than a hit and a walk per inning, to have this many innings on him already is incredibly impressive. He's already pitched 105 innings this year, and to get to the All-Star break and for him to lead the National League and American League in wins is pretty remarkable. That's why, if you're the Atlanta Braves, even with all the injuries they've had, it's remarkable. They're still creeping up a little bit closer to the Philadelphia Phillies, but I'm not worried about the Braves at all, especially if they keep getting this from Chris Sale and Ronaldo Lopez. Last bit of news here on the 2 o'clock. What's trending? Asia Wilson, Gamecock legend and the best player in the world, best women's basketball player in the world, is announced she'll be on the cover of NBA 2K with Jason Tatum and Vince Carter, which is a pretty cool ordeal. Because I can't think of another time that a former South Carolina Gamecock has been on the cover of a major video game. NBA 2K being arguably the most popular. It's kind of up there with Madden, one of the most popular video games on the planet. She'll be on the cover with new NBA champion Jason Tatum and dunk contest legend Vince Carter. Big Vince Carter guy. Arguably the greatest dunker in the history of basketball. But that's a pretty good trio to have on the cover. And speaking of Asia Wilson, I just looking through some of the numbers today. For those who haven't been keeping up with her and the Las Vegas Aces, the Aces aren't as good as they were last year, at least from a regular season standpoint. But she's averaging 27 points, 11 boards, and 3 assists. Yeah, she's still the best player in the world right now. She's going to win her third MVP, and I feel pretty good about that. I haven't seen gambling odds on that, but I feel pretty good that Asia Wilson's going to continue to cement herself as the best women's basketball player on the planet. She'll also be representing Team USA here in the Olympics in a short amount of time. So a really good year for Asia Wilson. Going to win a third MVP. Maybe another WNBA championship. Going to win a gold medal. Pretty good year for her. And being on the cover of NBA 2K with Jason Tatum and Vince Carter. That's what's trending at 2. We'll take a quick break, and on the other side, Brad Crawford joined myself and Jay Phillips yesterday, and we talked a lot of South Carolina football. He had an interesting piece out on 24/7 in the Big Spur about his bold predictions for the season and his more conservative predictions for the season. Jay and I asked him about a few of those, and we got some pretty interesting responses on what the outlook of this Gamecock football team can be as we steamroll into SEC Media Day. So we're going to hear what Brad had to say yesterday. We'll break down some of the South Carolina team and give our own conservative or bold predictions going into the 2024 season here on the Halftime Show in the Game. Halftime show. Elijah Campbell in for Terry Ford for at least this segment, while Terry has suit duty. He's got big boy meetings to tend to that sometimes just so happen to fall into the hours of his show. But I'm cool with playing a role of substitute teacher here for a little bit. I like to consider myself the fun substitute teacher. Did that for a year. One of the most interesting jobs I've ever had, substitute teaching. Don't think I'd want to do it again, but it was a fun experience. We're talking Gamecocks here in this hour. Yesterday on my show, along with Jay Phillips, we were talking to our buddy Brad Crawford from 24/7 Sports, who wrote a piece for 24/7, and you can find it on the Big Spur, and it's a freebie, so feel free to go hit it up, read it, and it's Brad's predictions for the South Carolina season. He gave some bold predictions. He also gave some more conservative predictions for the season, and they range both offense and defense. But we got to ask him about a little bit of his predictions yesterday, including starting off with one of his bold predictions was that the Gamecocks are going to produce an all-SEC linebacker. They do return a pretty good core of linebackers while also adding a few real talented pieces from the transfer portal. But here's what Brad had to say about the possibility of one of these linebackers ending the 2024 season with all SEC honors.
Yeah, it feels like it's been forever, really almost 2 coaching cycles since the Gamecocks have had a true difference maker at that position. Sky Moore, I mean, he was a guy that led the team in interceptions at that one season as an all-SEC player. But I think right now this is the deepest linebacker room South Carolina's had, certainly under Shane Beamer, possibly under the previous regime as well. I mean, Bam Martin-Scott's a guy who is going to take a major leap this season into that starting role. Debo Williams obviously is one of the SEC's hardest hitters and has shown flashes in recent years. But the 2 guys I'm looking at, man, are Demetrius Knight, transfer from Georgia Tech, who, Nick Emanwari has said on social media and various times this offseason that, Demetrius Knight's a guy who is going to be quite impactful at that position. And then Bengali Kamara, a linebacker from Pitt who's been uber productive in the ACC previously. So Gamecocks go about 4 deep at that position, feel really good about it. And I think, Shane Beamer may not have felt that way 5 or 6 months ago when he lost 2 linebackers to the portal. But the 2 guys he replaced them with are pretty darn talented players, and I think it's a position group that is no longer a weakness in Columbia.
I think Debo Williams would be the safest bet to be an all-SEC linebacker at the end of the year. And after all, he is the returning tackle king of the SEC. So out of all the guys from last year that's returning to play this year in the Southeastern Conference, he returns with the most tackles from 2023. And the guy is everywhere on the football field. If you want a perfect example of a linebacker who's really rangy, plays hard every play, and you'll take 11 of those guys based on effort alone, you'll take Debo Williams. He's that guy. But the one name he mentioned there that I'm really excited about to see added to this linebacker room, who I think will end up having the biggest impact, because even though I love Bam Martin-Scott, and his star really grew at the end of last season, and you could tell he was definitely trusted with more responsibility on that defense. But I'm a big fan of Demetrius Knight. And a lot of it's because of his versatility. He's awesome on the ground in terms of stopping the run. But there was a play last year, his 1 year at Charlotte, where he jumps an interception, jumps a pass from Maryland's Taulia Tagovailoa, who was also the Big Ten's all-time passing yard leader, as odd as that is to think about, jumps the pass from Taulia Tagovailoa and housed it. And read it like a book, too. And we got to ask him about that. I filled in for Tyler a couple of weeks ago on the Garnet Trust Hour. We had Demetrius Knight here in the studio, and he kind of broke down that play a little bit. And the way he mentioned the running back going out in the flat and Taulia Tagovailoa's tendencies to check down after a couple seconds and how he watched it on film, he studied the play, was able to recognize it in real time, and was just able to jump the pass with ease. And it was one of those pick sixes where there's no breaking another tackle afterwards. He is ahead of the ball, way ahead of the intended receiver, and by the time he catches it, you immediately know where that ball's going. And it's to the barn, and it's for 6 points. And that's just a microcosm of what Demetrius Knight can do. Demetrius Knight is a really productive player. He's played a ton of college football at 2 different levels. He's played Power 4 football in the ACC with Georgia Tech. He played on a Charlotte team where he was one of the leading tacklers and was the leading interception player. I mean, the guy almost led the team in tackles and did lead the team in interceptions as a linebacker. That's a lot of versatility. That's a guy who can do a bunch of different things. So not only did this linebacking group get older, they got better with the addition of Demetrius Knight. And Debo Williams and Bam Martin-Scott will definitely get a lot of the love here in SEC Media Days next week when it comes to maybe outsiders looking in on this team and even us projecting how this team's going to look forward. But Demetrius Knight can be the difference maker, making this a really good group. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if by the end of it, if everybody stays healthy, we could see Demetrius Knight possibly become an all-SEC caliber player. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, there were a couple of bold predictions on offense. A conservative one, though, was Lenore Sellers falling short of 3,000 passing yards. It makes sense. It makes sense for a first-year starter in the SEC. Lenoris has only thrown 4 passes in his career, and all 4 of those were against Furman. So he's not thrown a single pass in FBS action just yet. And the difficulty of this team, to me, on offense, isn't just that you're replacing Spencer Rattler. You're almost having to run a completely different offense because Lenoris has a completely different skill set than Spencer Rattler. And one of the biggest challenges anyone's going to have on this offense is Dowell Loggains trying to find an offense that perfectly fits his team's strengths. Lenoris is a great runner. Unproven passer, but a great runner because we saw what he did against Vanderbilt. And we've seen what he did when he was in high school at South Florence, when he dominated. And we also know that this running back room got a whole lot better and a lot deeper via the transfer portal. A lot of career experience, a lot of career yards are chilling in that backfield right now. So it looks a whole lot different than what it did last year. So here is Brad when I got to ask him about his conservative prediction about Lenore Sellers throwing for less than 3,000 yards, but also what he kind of foresees this offense being now that's going to be so much different. That was Steph Curry. I clicked the wrong button. But this is Brad Crawford answering my question about the offense and what he expects this to look like going into next year.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more zone read and option-type plays out of this offense. You know, I think for the most part last season and the year before that with Marcus Satterfield, South Carolina tried to keep Spencer Rattler upright as much as possible. He didn't run the ball much. There certainly was not a ton of quarterback design runs. That's going to change a good bit with Lenore Sellers and Robbie Astrup, the Auburn transfer behind him. You know, I think this offensive staff is going to do whatever it can to keep Lenore Sellers healthy. However, this guy's big, man. He's almost 6'5", 250 pounds. He's going to be able to take a hit, and he's somebody who I think can get 10 to 12 carries a game. Obviously, the backfield is brand new with 3 transfers there. So, I mean, South Carolina's going to enter that season opener next month against Old Dominion with, 3 ball carriers that it feels really good about, and a quarterback making his first career start that is a true dual threat, probably the first, the Gamecocks have had in several seasons. So I think he's going to fall short of 3,000 yards passing because I don't think that's the recipe for success for this Gamecock offense. I think you're going to see more balance, maybe 60-40 run pass, and, if these 3 transfers are as good as advertised in the backfield, this running game should be light years better than it has been in recent years.
And that I certainly agree with. I think this offense, when it comes to the ground game, is going to be a whole lot better. It's because they're more talented. They're deeper. You got a quarterback who, even though he might not throw for 3,000 yards, which Brad is predicting for next season, I can certainly see him rush from anywhere to 300 to 500, maybe even more. I know you don't learn a ton from a spring game, but one thing I did like watching the spring game, even though Lenoris can't get touched, I get it, but him being able to find running lanes when the play breaks down and be able to just pick up extra yardage. Your best quarterbacks that are scrambling quarterbacks will not leave clean pockets, but they're really good at noticing when you have 5 to 10 yards you can easily take to get a first down, extend the drive, and be able to just keep the drive moving. And Lenore showed that. I think he's got that inherent ability to extend drives with his legs. And while he might not throw for 3,000, I think he's going to be able to run for a lot, and I'm really curious to see exactly what Dowell Loggains does. If it's something like Brad said, maybe more read options, maybe more RPOs. You might see a whole lot more of that incorporated into this year's team just because him and Lenoris and Spencer, completely different quarterbacks with completely different skill sets. You have a completely new wide receiver room. Those are some of the big questions the South Carolina team's going to have going into next year. And it's going to be one of the more fascinating things to watch for in that first game against Old Dominion. Even though they're not going to show you much, you'll get at least your first good taste as to how this offense is going to operate when they first get onto the field against an opponent that's not their own defense late in August. Terry Ford returns. He's in the studio right now, back on the other side of the glass, getting himself ready. And this show, the stream, is going to get a little older and maybe a little less handsome when we return here on the halftime show. What's today? That's right. It's the greatest day in the history of the world. And Terry Ford is going to tell you why on the other side here on the halftime show.
Oh, the greatest day in the history of the world. Today is July 10th. Forget the greatest day in the history of the world, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I want to hear Elijah Campbell's substitute teacher story, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Oh, man. 1-800-GOT-JUNK would be wise to sponsor my substitute teacher stories. I was a substitute teacher for about half the year. And the other half, I was a special ed teacher's aide because the person who was holding that job left. Mm-hmm. And I was in between school stints. Mm-hmm. So, for lack of better terms, I may or may not have failed out of Tennessee Tech. Hard school. If you want to be an engineer, really hard. Flunked out of there. Went to live with my dad for a little bit. He's like, I can get you a job as a substitute teacher. We'll figure out what you want to do from here. Mm-hmm. So I'm living with my dad for a little bit in Jamestown, Tennessee, and I'm working as a substitute teacher. And I would say about 40% of the time I was subbing for PE for one of the schools in the school system. Mm-hmm. So I was did
if
that.
If you're going to subbing for PE is pretty good when you're kind of a fake teacher.
Some of the most fun days, I'm not qualified to teach kids. At this point, I'm like 21 years old at the time. I'm not qualified to teach these kids.
I'm qualified to teach them how to play beer pong.
Yeah, I could do that. I could teach them proper form, but I got to do a whole lot of special teacher's aid and substituting like PE. And I'm telling you, some of the best days of my life. Plunking kids like fourth graders with dodgeballs because I'd play with them. Well,
you were 21, of course.
They played the first game, and the winner or the loser got me, and then I just go back and forth.
Okay, now question: when you're playing dodgeball, and you're chucking a dodgeball. By the way, dodgeball's a phenomenal game.
It's so much fun.
Chucking a dodgeball at a fourth grader, which would be about 10?
Yeah.
You didn't hit him in the head, did you?
Oh no headshots.
Okay,
No, that was
just checking on you.
I'm a good teacher here. The rule is headshots do not count as
Here's
outs.
Here's the biggest question.
In the head, they're still in.
Here's the biggest question: were there ones you wanted to hit in the head, but you knew you couldn't because you had to be above that?
Oh, that made up like 70% of the group, Terry. Yeah, that made up like 70% of the group.
The first time when I got older, I started to have friends who were teachers, and I just realized when I was growing up how much we didn't like our teachers. They felt the same way about us.
Oh, that feeling's reciprocated. Yeah, certainly. But getting the release over and hitting them with dodgeballs is fun. It's also fun. Last day of the school year, my last day on the job as a special ed teacher's aide, we did video game day. And I was in the room, so all the teachers were in different classrooms with different stations, with different activities. Well, I was in the room where the Wii was and where Mario Kart was. And would play like 3 or 4 of them at a time, just ran them out.
Were you Cardell Jones and those kids?
Absolutely. No mercy. No mercy whatsoever.
Tough love.
And at this point,
tough lessons.
I'm a college-age student. I spent a whole lot of time drinking a lot of beer and playing Mario Kart with my friends, hours worth. One of the reasons why I wasn't in school anymore was maybe I did that a little too much. So I was a little too good at this game. So when anybody, it was a K through 8 school, most of the kids that would come into that room were 6th to 8th grade. And a lot of them liked to run their mouth because they wanted to beat me. And I'm not going to show any mercy. I ran them out of the room.
So I cracked some beers and sat down and kicked some tail.
Shotgunned a few Budweisers and showed them what's up. Unlike Mike Gundy, I didn't drive home.
Okay, Jimmy, get over here. You're next. Substitute teacher stories with Elijah Campbell, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. All right, greatest day in the history of the world, which is July 10th. There's some interesting ones here. Last year, Novak Djokovic, 2022, won his 4th straight and 7th Wimbledon title. Again, Novak Djokovic, whether you like him or not, is going to go down as the greatest tennis player in the history of the game. He just is. I mean, all the numbers will back this, especially in an era of 2 other Hall of Famers in Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. What Djokovic is doing, you don't have to like him, but the dude is the dude. He just is. I hate to say it.
He beat those other 2 a lot.
Yes. That's the thing. I mean, again, the other greats in their eras never played against 2 other Hall of Famers of that level. So Novak Djokovic winning his 7th Wimbledon title this day in 2022. 2017, an independent review in the scoring of the Manny Pacquiao-Jeff Horn fight for the WBO welterweight title confirmed the outcome that Jeff Horn won in a ridiculous decision. Look, the fight was fought in Australia. Horn is Australian. There was no doubt that fight, the decision of that fight, was not very objective. I watched that fight. Pacquiao beat him. Pacquiao beat Horn. But the decision went to Horn. The only worst decision involving Pacquiao was when he fought Bradley, whipped Bradley from one end of the ring to the other for 12 rounds, and they gave the decision to Timothy Bradley. And my thought was, what kind of blackmail does Bradley's people have on the judges? Anyway, other Wimbledon stuff. Andy Murray won his second Wimbledon title. That's important because Andy Murray is from Great Britain. For a long time, the English couldn't win Wimbledon. It's kind of like the English can't win the World Cup. The things the English want to win really bad or they think they're really good at, they can't win. Sort of like the Canadians trying to win the Stanley Cup now. But Andy Murray broke that hex, and he has a couple of Wimbledon titles. Spain won the World Cup on this day in 2010. 1-0 victory in extra time over the Netherlands.
Might see those two again.
Yes, you might.
Very soon.
Yeah, both pretty good. Yes, they are.
Good.
And 1999, this was... Look, even if you don't want to admit it, you probably watched part of it. This is back when the women's soccer team really hit in America. They were the best team in the world, the Mia Hamms, the Brandy Chastains, and all of them, the Julie Foudies. In 1999, on this day, Team USA, they won the Women's World Cup in sudden death, 5-4 in penalty kicks. You remember the Brandy Chastain taking off the shirt. That was this day in 1999. And one final one, because, again, it didn't really happen, I don't know, because there was no Sports Center. But this is an historic day in the history of the game of baseball, especially if you are a huge... Like Tommy Moody would be going crazy over this one today. On this day in 1934, Carl Hubbell struck out Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, Al Simmons, and Joe Cronin in succession for the National League. But the American League won the All-Star game.
He won the All-Star game. Yeah. The American League might have won the All-Star game.
But Carl Hubbell won the All-Star game. He was King Carl Hubbell. He was one of the best pitchers in the game of baseball early in the 20th century. And that moment, think of this. He struck out Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, Al Simmons, Joe Cronin, all in order. All some of the most feared hitters of the first 50 years of the game of baseball. That is a moment at the All-Star game. All right, so there's your greatest day in the history of the world, sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We had added a little extra Elijah Campbell substitute teacher stories in there as well.
Glory days.
We'll come back in here. Firehouse subtext the hour at 803-404-6100. That is next. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Buddy Elijah Campbell hanging out, helping us out. We roll till 3. Then Jay and Elijah will do the postgame show up until 6 on the game. Time for the Firehouse subtext of the hour, 803-404-6100. We'll get that baby in real quick. Interesting one. I like Brad Crawford's line of thinking about the South Carolina defense. My one concern is that they looked really good in November against teams that didn't have great offenses. And that's it. Okay. So, I mean, I get it, and Jay Phillips is here. I asked him really quick, are you sweaty, Jay, or are you shower, Jay? And you told me both.
Both.
So I looked up, and I was like, his hair's wet.
Yeah.
That didn't hit me. He said, we're talking about something. I'm like,
well, again, you remember, I only live like 5 minutes away,
That's
so
true.
I got out of the shower
you could have
about...
stuck your head out the window of your car, and your hair would have been dry by the time you got it.
But then I'd look, can't
Would
do that.
you
For
have
one
the
thing,
big...
it's like 150 degrees outside. I ain't doing that.
A lot of moisture in the air, too.
The humidity's stupid. No, I got out of the shower about a half hour ago.
No, you're still wearing a towel. Let's get that on video real quick. He's wearing his towel.
Let's turn the camera.
It's a little kind of bizarre. Hey, you do you, man.
I'm wearing my England jersey today, though.
By the way,
Go Three Lions.
and we'll get to that because, again, I find it highly entertaining that England can't win any major soccer championships, and their three favorite sports are soccer, and soccer. Let's go back to the text real quick. I get where the texter's going. Look, this defense on paper seems like it should be a good defense. I'm not saying it's going to be the greatest defense in the history of South Carolina football or it's going to be one of the best defenses in America, but it looks like it's going to be a good defense. Yeah. You've got depth and experience and productivity on the first two levels, especially finally at linebacker. Right. There's some stuff going on there. Right. I love what they did with the edge, with Stewart and also with Kennard. Yeah. They have a lot of depth in the interior defensive line of guys who are good.
Yes.
The back end of the defense, you're only replacing one starter. Obviously, it's important on the corner.
Sure.
Now, again, do you have to get better covering slot receivers? Absolutely. But I like the depth on this defense, the combination of pass productivity, experience, athleticism, possible playmaking ability, youth. Mm-hmm. I think that this defense is set up to be good. Now, I see where the texter's going. Yeah, look, Clemson, Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt. You're not talking about offensive powerhouses. But I thought that defense walked off the field with confidence in November.
Look, the Jacksonville State game got dicey. There's no question about that.
If Stone Blanton doesn't make that play, guess what?
No, yeah, you lose. Because they were going to score.
They were going to score.
I maybe take a little issue with saying Clemson was a bad offense.
That was not a good.
They're not like world beaters, but you didn't let Clemson score an offensive touchdown.
3 of those 4 offenses are A-plus run offenses. That's one thing, too. They did really well against teams that dominated their opponents.
Yeah, but I get it. But listen, I mean, you say depth. Elijah, what's my favorite term?
More good players.
I mean, that's it, man. Mm-hmm. You want to be good at football? Really? You want to be good at sports? You need to have a bunch of players. And I think this coaching staff has done as good a job as they can with who you are and where football is to bring in some good depth. Like I always say in football season, when it's spring or this time of year, how are you going to do? Ask me around Halloween. I'll let you know, because that's the best I can tell you. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There have been years when they've overachieved, underachieved, and this is any team, they have depth. And you mentioned another good thing. Elijah and I talked about this yesterday, with and without Brad. Where you might not have tons of talent up front, just like a bunch of, you don't have a Clowney or a Taylor or an Ingram anymore, mm-hmm. We'll see what Stewart turns into. But you do have veterans who understand the league, know, dare I say it, and I mean this in a good way, know their limitations, but also know the role of the guy next to them on either side, unless you're on the edge. Mm-hmm. And I think that you can make up for some talent deficiency with that level of veteran experience. Again, to what degree, I don't know. But I do think they have a lot of bodies over there that they're encouraged by, and I do think, and I give credit to the head coach for this, just like we saw with Marcus Satterfield a couple of years ago. Shane did it with Clayton last year. Hey, look, bud, it ain't working, and I need you to tweak it today. And we're going to see what happens. Now, is some of it a byproduct of the opponent? You can only play who's in front of you.
Right.
You don't get to go, hey, let's go play Georgia again and see if we can do a better job. Yeah, I thought you played well against Georgia, by the way.
For 30 minutes, you played excellent against Georgia.
But, and again, dumb luck and some bad play lets Florida beat you. Mm-hmm. And both happened. Some of it was you. And, again, that one play.
You shot yourself in both feet at the beginning of the Clemson game.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Clemson didn't score an offensive touchdown. And within a few minutes, you're like, oh, God. Yeah. But then you hung around as best you could. So you can only play who's in front of you. But I think Shane has shown his head coaching chops in that respect by saying to his coordinators, because Shane is the guy who says to his coordinators, you go do it. And then he'll interject as necessary. And we've seen 2 times in his 3 full seasons where he said, this ain't working. And I need you to switch it up. And the results were better. Yeah, and especially with Clayton. Look, the Satterfield thing was clunky from the get-go, right? Well, you and I had fun with the Denny's menu. Jeez, it was craziness, right? Yeah. So, but Clayton had, they had forced turnovers, and they had done some things on defense to cover up some weaknesses for 2 years, right? Yeah. So Clayton had gained some rep with Shane. Yeah. But Shane still had to sit down with him, October, early November, whatever it was, and say, bro, yeah, this 4-2-5 thing, man, or whatever you've been doing that has been acceptable in one way, shape, or form, it ain't working now. We gotta tweak this thing because it's going down a bad road, and we got to fix this road. I mean, again, we're having trouble covering slot receivers. We're not getting a whole lot of pressure on quarterbacks. We're inconsistent stopping the run. We're not getting big plays on defense at all. We need some help here. We got to do something. And that's really I've said this forever. I always, I told you the Brian Billick story with Mike Nolan when Billick went, hey, Mike, look in the press guide. Who's on page 1? Me, I'm the head coach. I tell you what to do. Right. I love the fact that Shane walked in and said, I love you, but I'm the head coach. Right. And look, I'm not a defensive genius. That's what I hired you for. But I know this. Me as the head coach, I don't like what I'm seeing. And we got to do something. There you go. I see what's happening and or not happening. And again, we've seen it twice. Yeah, and you'd like this year to be more consistent on both sides. We do have to understand that there's going to be a new offense, same guy running it, but it's going to be overhauled to some degree. And does Clayton from the get-go start with the more basic package and allow it to grow? These are things. But again, you want to know how good they're going to be? Like I say, ask me around Halloween. So what's up on the? I say what you should do is spend 3 hours having Elijah tell you substitute teacher stories. But what else you got going on here? What do we have? Jack Beltry's talking baseball transfers, SEC Media Day stuff, Sweet. And nice. We were all shocked by Kawhi not playing. It's all coming up.